well, scream to Mike if it gets wacky or anything like that. Well, thanks for coming. This is an idea I had about, I did a little uh, show on the Okefenokee a while back, and I'm like, "Ah, I want to do something about my stream that I work with Adopt a Stream. And I kind of, the idea kept milling around, milling around, and milling around. And then COVID hit and everything went online and just all this stuff changed. So it was like, we could have a virtual blog of all these different people and all their different stories about their interaction with water. And we're focusing on photography tonight in the next session, but really you just, it could develop into, you know, any kind of art. You could do some haiku. But my expertise is photography, so I'm going to talk about that. I I talked a little bit about the mission statement. I mean, about what it's about. Just mainly, if people understand a resource, they want to protect it. And this is a really good way for people to notice and appreciate a water source, a natural resource that is right in your backyard, sometimes literally. How this came about was, well, Mike and I were talking about some kind of show or something like that. And I love to be outdoors and I love nature and art. So it just seemed like a kind of a combination that was meant to go together. And if we get, it's a great way to get other people showing their streams and telling stories about their streams. And what I envision will happen is that I've got a blog and we're going to put different people's stories on it and highlight, you know, different people, and then we'll put them all together, and then on August 3rd we'll have a virtual opening, or maybe even a get together opening, but it's going to be online. It's going to be in blog form. That's a little about me. I went to art school and studied photography and graphic design, and I've been a commercial photographer and a graphic designer before that. And um, my main form of income before COVID was pet portraits, other people portraits too, but mainly pets. Um, and here are some of my blogs. I've got a blog about stepping into nature, and my portrait site is Bart Photography, and Smug Mug is where I keep all my prints for sale and stuff. And there I am. I pull those pictures from my blog. And here's some of my little puppies that I did for clients. It's great fun doing dog portraits because they're just kind of unpredictable, kind of like children. I'm not sure if you guys are involved with Adopt a Stream or not, but it seemed like a lot of people that signed up um, weren't really working with Adopt a Stream. So I just wanted to say that it's a great uh, resource. It's fun. You get to be a citizen scientist. You can pick a stream or water body and test it, and it's amazing how that data gets used uh, for scientific purposes. It helps with the local government. It's just a great way to get involved. Here is the online the address for our stream stories. And Friday I'm going to put it live. I'm going to include just some more resources and then a copy of the lecture on there as well. And there's nobody's work there but mine, but it's just I've got a few stories there to kind of give you an example and give you some ideas about how to create a stream story. This is a sample of the blog. We'll have about that can be, you know, just about your stream, or who you are. If you want to be contacted, a place for resources. And this is a sample, a basic sample of how the blog would look. You'd have a topic, and this is a little stream story I did about a leak that was in my stream. So you've got the person who did it, the creek, or the the water body. It doesn't have to be specifically a creek. Where I am, and then the watershed. So I start out with just an overall picture of the creek. A neighbor notified me that the creek had changed color. I've got a detail shot. I say that orange is never a good color for creek. And then I wanted to document the sediment to show that the sediment was pouring into the stream, which would really mess up the wildlife and just the quality of the water. What I did, my action was I headed upstream to try to figure out from my friend's house where this leak was taking place. And I made progress. And then I found where the silt was heavily on one side of the stream. And we're going to talk about like just pictures later. But I mentioned that sometimes you can't have a perfect picture in a documentary style setting, because this is an important picture. This is a picture that kind of links the rest of the story together. But where the sediment was separating from the other water, where it was coming into the stream, there was this big pipe. So it had to be in the story. And here's the ultimate culprit. It was an old pipe that poured into Poplar Creek, which is my stream. And here's the closing picture. It was a one-time event. So I got Cobb County to come out and look and check, and they investigated, and they weren't able to find the source, but now they have a record of it. So if it happens again, they have documentation. So that is basically what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making up stories about what's near and dear to your heart, and then putting them together. Okay, today, what I want to outline, what we'll cover. The intro, we've done that already. We're going to talk a little bit about the elements of storytelling and how to pick a subject, ideas for subjects on your photo essay, photo story, how to use words in your story, and plans for getting out and taking those pictures. And that'll be about halfway through. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to get to the photography part of our evening. This is kind of more academic, a little drier, but I think it's important for us to go through this. So shooting pictures, better pictures, that's the bulk of the second half. We'll talk just briefly about editing your pictures, just touch on it so you'll have an idea of what's to come. But next class, we're going to really dive into editing your pictures and how to submit your work. And we'll just briefly talk about that. And we have the good old closing and review and moving forward. So let's get on with the storytelling elements of our evening. Images are extremely powerful. They bring out people's emotions. Unlike signs and just raw facts and figures of data, like this sign, it's stop illegal dumping. Yes, that's a good idea. But then when you see this, you're like, oh, we got to do something about that. You're working from a different part of your brain. You're a picture and a story get you emotional, where charts and graphs are good information, but they don't affect you the same way. Let me get to my notes here. This is a blog from National Geographic, and they're citing Ella Saltmarsh, and I think that's her real name. but she was talking about using stories to change systems. And basically what they're talking about is that stories, the highlighted and the bold part is stories bring communities together, um, by giving them empathy and coherence. And we're far more likely to understand another person's position when emotions and narratives are involved. Okay, this parts of a photo story. A photo story isn't just a pile of pictures. You want to share a story just like you have in a written word. You have paragraphs, sentences, you have a structure that kind of leads your viewer through the story. The first is a title, the title page, what, like, say there was a new bridge being built over your stream because there was a lot of foot traffic. Perhaps for the title, you'd have this picture, this bridge, and then kind of an overall background image. You could have all the silt and how the banks of the creek have gotten messed up because people have to trudge through the creek. In an overall picture, maybe you can show all the traffic right beyond the creek to show what a populated area that is. The details could be the silted up water, the lack of the banks eroding, and actions would be them building the bridge. And then you can have a conclusion of how it was successful, wasn't successful. You could show the bridge, you could show people's dry feet, but something that brings it all together, just like a closing sentence in a paragraph. And that's kind of how I try to just kind of get the point across, like a topic sentence. That's the basic idea of your story. And then all your supporting sentences, when you have a paragraph, are explaining the main idea and their actions and their details. And this is the same way with photos. And then you'll have a closing sentence, which reiterates what you're trying to say and your ending observations. And real quick, I just brought this back, this photo story that I just showed you. It's like, this is my topic. I'm setting the viewer up to know what I'm going to talk about. Here are some details showing and really pointing out that this is an odd color for a stream, and pointing out this is an odd substance for a stream. And then I wanted to show what I was going to do, the action, how we were going to proceed in the story. Then we came up to the sediment, and then we found the culprit. And then this kind of concludes it, because this is where everything originated. And this is also a good place to have a call to action. You say, if you see something in your stream, call so and so and so and so, something like that. Okay, the main point is to build your story and not have just a bunch of pretty pictures of your stream, which may be great, but it's not the same thing as telling a story and getting another person involved in how you feel about your story. And I just kind of went on and tried to break it down like a sentence. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? The parts of a stream story or a photo essay or a photo story? Okay, let's move on to picking your subjects. Okay, there's a couple types of essays. They're kind of divided up into two broad categories. One is more an overall thing, like endangered species in the US or pollution in Georgia streams. They cover a wider geographical area, they cover a bigger scope, more of a general idea. What will probably, I mean, I'm not sure what you guys are going to come up with, but what we're probably going to focus on is more of a narrative theme, which is like a specific topic of like an endangered fish in your specific streamer area, or like that little pipe event that I had, where all that silt and runoff somehow got into the stream. They're classic photo essay, and the difference, photo essay, I'm using photo essay and photo story interchangeably, and it's pretty much the same thing. Photo essay kind of comes from more of a photojournalistic point of view, and photo story is just it's more creative and more, you can do more things with it. Like a photo essay traditionally in a photojournalism sort of view is their goal is to show exactly what happens, exactly. They're not going to Photoshop things. They're not going to take, oh, a little wire out of the picture, or an overhead wire. Where in a photo story, if it's not adding to your picture, nobody's going to say anything about that. So they're pretty much interchangeable, but I just kind of wanted to tell you that because I keep using both of them. Okay, these are kind of classic themes that people have been doing for photo stories for forever. Like a time-related event. And I've kind of put this, kind of made these streams specific. A specific time, and perhaps an afternoon in your stream, a season of the year, when it snows by your stream, what happens there? The leaves changing, leaves falling into the stream, or just over time, how your stream has changed. Has there been a lot of construction upstream that has caused your stream to wear differently, erosion, anything like that? Travel narratives, you've just got a little stream, but you still can have a trip up and down your stream to kind of show where it goes. We could talk about the headwaters of your stream or the confluence where it meets another stream. Events, specific happenings in your stream, not everyday occurrences, like a cleanup or a flood or a trash dump. There was one recently, that's another example that I have on the blog of just a lot of trash got dumped in Rottenwood Creek, and we had a cleanup, but that all that trash just disappeared. Or even hatching, like a critter hatching near your stream or something like that. Perhaps like behind the scenes of your stream, that's maybe not so much a picture of your stream, but just a zoning issue that might involve your stream. Perhaps they're mapping out your stream, testing of the stream. They put a sewer pipe along my stream a couple of years ago, so that was a big thing they had, and they had some problems with it. The pipe kind of broke into and messed up the stream a bit. Points of non-point pollution or point source pollution, that type of issue. Maybe somebody's monitoring for amphibians or something like that. Historic, that's always interesting. How your stream has been used in the past. Is there evidence of mills or dams? Historic uses for the stream. Was it a waterway for somebody to get their goods to market? And water changes course over time. My dad has a stream beside his house, and just in the course of those 40 years he's been there, the stream has radically, changed its curves. Also, characteristics of the stream, and we're going to talk about these elements in the second half, but things like artistic design, like S-curves. Are there cool curves in your stream? Or how the light affects the stream. You could have a study of ripples and pools of the stream, and even go about, especially in spring when everything's blooming, everything's coming up green, just the different colors of green that are on your stream and around your stream, and how the bank and the substrate changed. Another thing is inhabitants of stream, critters who live in the stream, critters who visit the stream. A lot of times you won't see those critters, but perhaps you know, they leave interesting tracks. They bed down near the stream. Plants in and around your stream. You can talk about native plants or invasive plants and what they're doing to the stream, and even human interaction, you know, people enjoying a stream. There's just so much information on the internet with examples of stream stories, or I mean essays, photo essays, and a few stream stories. And it's a great way to get inspired and see, for all you can see. This is a Life magazine was a magazine published a few decades ago, and they featured a lot of photo essays, and they had just photo essays of everything. And here are here's some topics, and then they even have, this is their kind of homepage. Here they have famous photographers who work for them, because there were a lot of famous photographers who worked for them. And here's the website right there. And I think Mike's gonna put in any websites I reference. He's going to put it in the chat room so you can copy it down. And I'll also have a copy of all these links on the blog. And I wanted to show you, I'm trying to see how we are on time. I wanted to show you at least one of these stories, maybe two, of how the photo essay greats handled their story. So I'm going to get out of my screen. Got to go over here, get the link. This is just a fun, it's not really a story about nature or a stream. This is just like a fun essay where the photographer has taken a small aspect of life and really gone in depth. And it's interesting too, because it's an odd picture. It's like, why are these kids hanging out with boxes on their heads? Well, in the 1970s, I believe, there was a big eclipse, kind of like, you know, we had one recently. The big thing is you don't want to watch the eclipse with your naked eye. So someone did a photo essay of how these kids were going to watch the eclipse as a class project. So here they are with all their boxes on their heads. They're cutting out, they're making their boxes, they're getting their dimensions right. How they're looking through it, it's a pinhole camera. So it's the same way you make a pinhole camera. You have a little dot, and then the light comes in, and then it creates an image. And that is what the teacher's explaining. So more details, more information on how, you know, how they're learning, how the kids are learning about this. There's a small child with a large knife that might not happen now. This is a kid, he is demonstrating, he's testing it out. The light is going to come. I keep wanting to point with my finger. The light is going to come behind him, and then right in here is where he'll see the eclipse. And so they're testing him out. They're taking him out outside. They're waiting for the eclipse. This one cracks me up because they're all in their boxes, keeping their eyes safe, and the teacher or principal is just up looking straight into the sun. Here they are again. And the final closing shot is just to kind of show the kids with their final products. So there's one, and let me show you, I'll show you another one real quick. I think we have time. Oop, sorry. Too early. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is something you could really relate and use in, you know, a stream story. This is a story from the 60s. It's just about kids and how they hang out and enjoy the leaves. So you've got a kind of an opening shot showing this child really, let's see, let me get it out without the, there we go. She's just enjoying the leaves, a good opening shot. And here's a kid playing in the leaves, more of an action shot. There she is again, just a close up of the face with just enough information about the leaves to just understand why he's so happy. Here they're raking, they're doing their chore. Now they're just having fun with the leaves, investigating if they float, trampling on all the leaves, throwing them up the air after they pile them up, doing other things. A nice just overall shot of the leaves in the fall to give you a sense of place. Burning the leaves, which may not be so cool now. But what happens to kind of showing eventually what happens to the leaves. And so that's the story. And this site is great because it goes into more detail and it gives you the text. But this site is just a really neat site to just kind of investigate what other stories are out there and kind of the history of a photo story. And here's the links to these. They're all you can find them on that Life site. Here's another, I just wanted to show you real quick, more modern version. This is a blog. This was on the NRS site, which is a kayak outfitter. They make kayaks and gear for kayaks, and it's about somebody who is snorkeling in the river. You've got the overall shot. It's Christian Coex. A shot of him with his, or probably not him, but somebody snorkeling. More detail shots. We'll talk about the trash they found and the size of the fish. More details. And then just a cool overall shot, leaving the finishing shot, just kind of it gives me a feeling of, oh, that's cool. I want to go do that. And there's the link for that. All right. Ways to find a stream story. This is all great, good information, but you need to find the stream story that you want to do. And here's kind of a little guide I recommend. Get a piece of paper, brainstorm, come up with at least 20 ideas. Just whatever comes to mind, and don't discount anything. Like, you could have some crazy idea that would never work, but that idea might lead to something else that would be a brilliant idea and very doable. So get your list, think of as many things as you can, then put it down for a little bit, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. And it can inspire you for more ideas, or you can kind of see ones that really intrigue your interest. Do a little planning and research on some of the more interesting ones to find out if there is enough depth there to have a photo essay. Then pick a few, 2 or 3 of the topics, and you can go out and kind of do a test shoot, see if the material that you're thinking is there. And then come back with that, and a really good way to further kind of investigate is to look at your shots. Just look at your shots and just be open to what kind of stands out in your head, what you like, and that can really help lead you to your final idea. And keep all your ideas, because stream stories can be addictive. Okay, does anybody have any questions about picking a topic and ideas for streams or for photo essays? All right, we'll move on to words. Now, it's true that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes a few words can help to set the scene. So think about in a written story, people add images to kind of help support what they're explaining in their written words. But when you have a photo story, the written words are the supporting role. They're only there to give you to give the viewer more insight into what's happening in that picture, give more details. Ways to use words. Photo essays usually aren't really heavy on words. It kind of varies. But you can have an opening paragraph that kind of introduces the viewer to more background information that would be hard to illustrate with a photograph and not have a whole bulk of where you were and then go into your subject. So just a few words can kind of set the scene, like our bridge that they built. Local park gets so crowded that there's so much traffic. They need to build a bridge. And you can have a closing paragraph. That's always good for a situation that you might ask for help. Like, if you have a problem like this, or if you would like to do it off the stream, you can go to this website. It just kind of sums it up, and you can kind of say if it was if the ending was good or not, that sort of thing. Or you can just put some captions in an image, which just gives a little bit more detail about the particular image. And it's perfectly fine if you don't use any words at all. Here's an example from just a little essay I did. Where we were in the mountains, and it's kind of the day didn't go well, and we cut our hike short, and we just kind of went cross country back to the car. But we found this little bitty just mountain stream, and it had been raining and everything, but then the sun hit it, and it just glowed, and here I wanted to show some of the patterns that the light interacting with the water was making. So I just put a little caption just to kind of give some background. When the sun popped out from behind the clouds, I was able to capture images of interesting patterns. Here's another example, and this one is just more of an open paragraph, and I don't have any other words. This is from the Bob Callan Trail, which parallels Rottenwood Creek, and it has a real urban feel and a real out in the woods feel too. It's just very interesting that they're so close together. So here's my opening, and the whole thing about this photo essay is in kind of the more concrete buildings that goes under some bridges. Some people have made these little critters. They've painted these little critters. They're gone now, unfortunately, but I just thought these little critters were great. Just alongside the stream, that's my husband on the greenway with this little critter sitting on the railing. Now I want to talk just for a second about Dorothea Lange. You're probably familiar with especially this picture. She documented the Dust Bowl and the Depression, and her work's very famous, and it's just it was just the government kind of subsidized it with all the work programs, and we wouldn't have all this documentation if she hadn't gone out and done it. Anyway, they have a whole exhibit about how she used words and combined her words with her pictures to give them more insight. And on this site, if you go to their exhibit, punch on the first little film, and it's her as a much older woman talking about how what she put with her images, just kind of a few words that people said, and that type of thing that really brought the image to home and made the image more powerful. This is one thing that she says about captions and just a little wording with her photographs. I'm going to read it because it's hard to read and I think it's kind of cool. Am working on the captions. This is not a simple clerical matter, but a process, for they should carry out not only functional information, but also added clues to attitudes, relationships, and meanings. They are the connective tissue. And in explaining the function of the captions, as I am doing now, I believe we are extending our medium, which is photojournalism and photography. So I highly recommend looking her up and going to this site, which is I found really cool, and we could talk about that the rest of the time. Okay, does anybody have any questions about words? Okay, and we can do questions too at the end, if anything pops up, and just put them in the chat because Mike's just sitting there. He needs something to do. All right, getting out there. Okay, planning ahead and research. Why do you want to do this? You're going to go out and shoot a stream. You've been to the stream, you've seen it a million times. If you just kind of do a little research, do a little planning, you can better anticipate, like problems that might come up. Say that it was a stream right below a dam from the Chattahoochee, and if they have a dam release, that's really going to change things. So you can plan accordingly. The more information you know, the more you're going to be able to be aware of opportunities that might pop up that were really going to make your shoot wonderful. It gives you a wider view. You'll have more insight, and you'll have a richer experience, and that translates to the viewer's richer experience. And also just kind of practical too. The subject may be great, but then if you look around a little bit, do a little research, there's really not that much there. And so you could move on to something else and you can save yourself some time. Things to look for when you're going out for a shoot. Think of the time of day. Think of what light would be best. Can you do this shoot in several shoots? Like if it's a cleanup, the people are going to come and go, and that's it. You can't get them back to do the cleanup again. But if you're shooting light or something that's going to be there time after time, you can go back and you can approach the story totally differently. Make a shot list, just a list of ideas that might make good story material. Kind of give your pictures some story, so you can tell a story with them. And then make a backup plan, and then make another one, and then be open to the unexpected. Here is, I'll just look at the time. Here's a plan. It's called a storyboard, and you can see here what I've done. And these are pictures from a cleanup. That cleanup I was talking about. Is you can think ahead and go, okay, what would make a good story? Probably a picture of people who came to the cleanup and who got all the stuff. Maybe they're all dirty and grimy. Probably showing how an overall view of how trash the creek got, how much litter is everywhere. Is going to be a good overall shot. Some details of people picking up in the creek, maybe while they're in the creek, or picking up bags from bushes alongside the creek, maybe a detail of that. And then something to kind of close the story, you just kind of sum it up. Like it could be in my layout, my little storyboard, I just had a picture of, I drew a picture of just a bunch of garbage. I thought that might be good. But then I've got a picture of this gentleman taking away the garbage. It just seemed to say more to me than just a pile of garbage, even if you took it at a good angle or something. So that just gets you thinking, and you don't need to use the exact pictures in your storyboard, but it's a starting point, and it gives you some good things to think about and good picture opportunities to look for. Okay, here's just a brief comment about light. Light is everything in photography. I mean, it's what make things and it's what makes things pop, and just it's just wonderful how things how you can look at things and how they react to the light. Um, so the best light for taking pictures is usually the morning or the late afternoon. And that's because the sun is lower in the sky, and it's just you I'm using my hands again. Um, you've got a lower angle, so it gives everything a little more depth, and it's going through the atmosphere too, and so the color is just a nice warm color. Remember, like when you're in a stream, a valley, streams are in valleys and gullies and wooded areas, that the morning light might arrive a little later and disappear earlier than if you were just out in a field. Um, you can check sunrise and sunsets, on your computer, and it catches up with you how fast they change. It's like, oh yeah, 10 minutes later. Anyway, activities of critters and people and plants, they change during the day too. I mean, a lot of times critters are a lot more active in the morning. Maybe kids come by in the afternoon. Plants, like a morning glory, opens up. And you could even bring your own headlamp or flashlight to just kind of pop a little extra light. If it's kind of in the shadow, or if it's a really harsh shadow, you can pop a little extra light with that headlamp or flashlight. And this is just a real important thing. And every time before I go to a shoot, I think, just kind of try to get that beginner's mind. It's kind of a Zen Buddhist thing. And what it means is just kind of try to empty your mind out of all the ideas and stuff, and just so you can be open to what's actually happening. Because sometimes there's a slight different take that develops, and it's so much better than what you even thought you were going to get. It's Shoshin. It refers to having the attitude of openness, eagerness, and the lack of preconceptions when studying a subject, even if you're studying it at an advanced level. And it's a good just way to think right before you go out, because all that information and all that research, it's in your head. It's still in there. You don't want to think about it too much. Okay. Now it's time for our break, and we're pretty much right on time. Let me look at my computer. Let me look at the computer real quick, see what time it is. It's 7:49. So why don't we stretch your legs for about 3 or 4 minutes, and come back at like 3 after 8. And then we'll get into the bulk of shooting better pictures. And if anybody has come up with any questions, we'll start with those too. All right, 3 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. So let's meet back here in 2 more minutes. It's 7:52.
Yeah, a little better. How's it going? Good.
What's going on here? All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, good, good. Okay, back to work. All right, before we go on, did anybody have any other questions about all the photo story stuff in the core grammatical aspect of it? I'll have my notes online on the blog on Friday. So if anybody wants to, review that and stuff like that and ask me any questions later, I'm at, and we'll talk about this later. I'm at our stream stories our stream stories at gmail.com. And why I did that was because I didn't want to get all y'all's emails mixed up with other emails, so I can address your emails better. Okay, now here we go. Let's talk about some principles of design. And let's start out with balance. Balance is a real important aspect, because if your picture is unbalanced, it makes your viewer feel kind of topsy-turvy, and it's like visually their eyes kind of want to just fall out of the picture. There are two types of balance. You've got symmetrical balance, which is the same on each side. This type of balance, it can show power, and it can be used in a good way, but a lot of times it can be make a more static and boring image. It just doesn't have any tension in it. Now, asymmetric balance, this is where different objects of different visual weights will fill up the image in a way, in a composition that creates a balance, even though it's not a big tree compared to multiple trees. But I've got a lot of examples, so I will show you. So this, I bet you guys figured out that's symmetrical. You can see how when you take it apart and divide it down the middle, it's pretty much the same on both sides. Now here's a tree down in South Florida. And this one's it's not quite as obvious. But you see this tree smack in the middle, and it's not quite, I think it'd be better on the side. You don't have totally symmetric stuff on each side, but it's pretty symmetric. I mean, you basically got the ocean, and then you've got the sky with a few trees. So this is pretty symmetrical. And we divide it up, and you can see half the trees on one side and half the trees on the other. Now, this is an image, and it's a more subtle difference with this example, but I think it's important because people aren't going to go up to your pictures and go, "Oh, I like that one better because it has a little more asymmetrical design to it." It's a gut feeling. They're just going to feel like, "Oh, I like that picture better than the other picture." So anyway, this one, you have all this weight of the color and just that open space balanced off with these 3 trees and a little more bulk of this tree. If we divide it up, you can see how only a bit of the tree is over on the right side. And if you look at them together, you can tell a difference. And in some pictures, it's a lot more obvious than others, but I wanted to show you this just to show you just a lot of photography. There's little subtle things that people they wouldn't put their finger on why they like something better. But this is one of the elements that you can use for people to go, "Oh, I like your picture better." Okay, here's symmetrical balance. Once again, one more example. You can tell it's the same on both sides. But this picture, I feel like it works because it gives a sense of strength because it's kind of immovable. Um, it's a part of a drawbridge, which you want to be steady. So it gives it a sense of power and like it's going to be there for a while. And the balance is kind of in your face, like with the dandelion. That was just in your face, so it makes it a powerful image, even though it's symmetrical. Okay, and here's some examples of asymmetrical balance. Here we have some trees in their reflections. So you've got one large tree, then you have 4 small. To kind of balance out the scene. So if you can take your hand and put it over the 4 small ones, you feel like you feel kind of like you're leaning towards a big tree out of the picture without those to balance it off. Now here we have a closer boater on the left, and then we have these 3 other boaters coming in. And this balances her being bigger and the smaller 3 objects balance this out. It is also a good example of a leading line, these boaters right here, and of repetition. And we'll talk briefly about those in just a minute. But you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, just the repetition of that, and your eyes just love, and your brain loves repetition. Here's another one. It just kind of shows the scene. It's showing more of a celebration. It says celebration more than any particular person. And the way that it's balanced is we've got that hand and that glass in focus. It's larger. And then on the side, we've got the other participants. And this was like an after kayaking event. And they're all happy, and you can see it's just a celebration. But by having them softer, this glass stands out more and kind of it's just a good way to tell a story and be slightly less obvious than just everybody being in focus and everybody being on the same plane. Here, the detail of this bud, the greens and the browns, balance off this huge, lighter space of green. And also notice the line that the bud is making. It's kind of coming over, and by having this huge space of green on the right, you're giving some place for that bud to go, and you're giving some place for the viewer's eye to go, because it's not just plain green. It's got subtle changes and subtle variations in the green, and that gives it a little more character, and it kind of keeps your eye there a little longer. Here's another example. And on the left, we've got a really busy, detailed tree full of Spanish moss, and it's kind of a medium gray. And then on the right, you've got this big expanse of a very light gray, or, you know, pretty much almost white, and then one small darker object. And so all the power of that emptiness is powerful, and it balances out the other side. Here we've got a kayaker, and the way to just kind of give the feel of a big expanse of ocean was to make him small. And over here on the left, you've got pretty much the same color. You know, you've got blue, 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 ocean blue, and sky blue. Over here, you see a little more of the ripples. This weighted, you've got a little bit of weight from these ripples. But the main thing is you've got this small, very different colored and different toned, like a darker object. And it balances the two. And if this was in the middle, if this little kayaker was in the middle, it'd just be very static. This picture, you have a feel and emotion, because you can see he's going this way. He's got someplace to go. And also, it gives that show of expanse. You could get in nearer, but you wouldn't feel like he was in the big, big, wide ocean. Okay, I've got a question. Is this symmetrical or asymmetrical? Well, it's complicated, because if you look just at the little shack, and if there was nothing else there, that would just be all sorts of symmetrical. But because you've got all this greenery here, and it's covering a bigger expanse than this, it's definitely more weight holding that side. And then the dock is mostly on the left side. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to call that asymmetrical. Okay, does anybody have any questions about balance? All right, we will move on. The next is the rule of thirds. And what this is a way of mapping out a photograph with points and proportions that keep the composition of the image pleasing to the eye, but not so static to make it unexciting. We divide up a photograph into thirds, horizontally and vertically. And at these access points, at the intersections of those lines, that's a great place to have one of your subjects. It just kind of creates a little tension. It's more interesting to your eye. It's a good way to have asymmetrical balance. Let me show you some examples. Okay. It's my, let's see, hold on, why is that? Okay. Let's see. Sorry, a technical thing. There we go. I don't know. I wasn't sure why all that other stuff's showing. Anyway, so let's go back to this one. Here is my friend Whitney, and she is paddleboarding. And you can see there's some asymmetrical balance going on. But look where she is in the scheme of things. Here we have divided the picture into thirds using these horizontal lines. and thirds using these vertical lines. And look at that. The line where the sky and the ocean meet is right on that line. The bulk of the clouds is in the middle third. And then you've got the expanse of blue sky up here. And look where her paddleboard and she are. Pretty much right at this intersection. So you can kind of see how that makes a nice, pleasant picture that's not static. It feels like it's going someplace. And another point too is notice that she has a place to go. She's going forward into the open space. Okay, whoa. Here is another tree, and you can see this just is divided up. It almost makes the lines for you. The tree is over on the right third. The bulk of the tree right smack in the middle of the picture. And then you've got some sky and ocean or water right here. It was actually, sorry, it was a lake. It's like the headwaters of the St. Johns River, or the navigable part of the headwaters. It goes on a bit further, but nobody can figure out where it is. It's so marshy. Anyway, and here's the top. And look at this. This tree is pretty much following on this straight line over here, this vertical line. All right, next shot. This is Stevie. We were paddling down the Tallapoosa River on our paddle boards, and he's taking a break. So look how he divides up. He's in the river. All the action seems to be in the middle third. You've got trees on the top third. And you've got the rock on the bottom. And he's right at that angle too. Look at that. He is pretty much right in those crosshairs. So you can see how it divides up. And it makes it a lot more interesting than if he was moved over just in the center right here. Okay, does anybody have any questions about the rule of thirds? Okay, we will move on to repetition. Now, repetition, ever since we were, way back when hunter-gatherers, your brain was trying to figure out the world, and a good way to kind of sort out stuff is to categorize it and look for patterns. So it kind of helps you with your sense of the world, and it feels good to your brain. And repetition can be more than just a single tree here, just all over the place, like several trees in a row or anything. It can just be similar shapes or a similar texture, similar color, or even similar line movements. And repetition is a great way to make leading lines, which we're going to talk about next. And repetition can lead your eye around the photograph to make it more interesting. It's your eye, when you look at a photograph, it tends to want to follow patterns. And as a photographer, you want to keep that viewer in your picture. You don't want to shoot him out the side with some big line that goes smack out to the side before he gets a chance or she gets a chance to really settle into your picture. And also repetition is a good tool to create balance in photography. Okay, this is actually, I don't know if you can see it. This is like a mug I designed. So it's a little more than the actual picture. I purposely put more on the sides to give it more repetition so it would cover the whole mug. But it really illustrates how you can almost call that symmetric balance, but you've got so much variation of these trees. What's going on with these trees, how they're almost animated, that it keeps the viewer engaged. And what also keeps them is they're similar enough that they give you a lot of repetition. Okay, here is some repetition. This is that river cleanup, and you notice that you've got this person and then another person, another person, and this helps lead your eye back. It's not only the people in the picture, but it's colors. The background is pretty monotone. I mean, you know, it's pretty greensies and brownsies, but the repetition of these different colors kind of lead your eye back as well. So you can, your eye comes in here because she kind of attracts your attention first, and your eye just shoots back, following all those people. Now here's another repetition. You would think if somebody described this to you, you'd be like, oh, that sounds boring. You know, it's just a bunch of straight lines. Your eye is going to come in one way and then zip out the other. But it really happened that way because you've got this repetition of these boardwalks or these, you know, the docks. But you have what's holding them up too. You've got the pillars, then the repetition of the pillars. So your eye doesn't just zoom across. It kind of, oh, there's a line where that pillar is. It goes down the next line. It kind of dances around. And then you've also got these boats and these docks where they're stored to kind of help with making your eye dance around a little bit more. So it's repetition, but because it's so repetitive, and you've got two types of repetition, your eye likes that photo and, or mine does, and bounces around and has a good time in it. Here's some more. This is color too. Not only are these three boats in a sup, the lines of the boats are the repetition, but also the colors. And even the sup, it doesn't, you know, it's white, but it's a, you know, it's kind of more in these bright colors than the background is. And so the repetition leads you into each photograph, and you can then you kind of pick up on the people eating lunch. Now here, this was a shot to illustrate how busy this dock is on the St. John's. And so I didn't really need to show the dock, just the amount of boat traffic. But you see this guy, there's a little tension there because he doesn't have anywhere to go. He feels crowded in, as opposed to some of the other people who had that whole expanse of that open space to go to. So to me, this kind of says crowded dock. And also look how these other docks lead your other boats lead your eye just smack into that bitty edge of that dock. And that, the key there is the repetition. Okay, this is kind of a crazy repetition shot. And it could very easily not work. Say you wanted to have it more asymmetrically balanced. That extra tension could just lead to total chaos, because the thing that grounds this is you've got these continuous repetition of these squiggly lines. And also, you notice you've got more weight, more trees in the foreground here and here. They kind of balance it out. And because there's so much going on in the squiggly lines, to me, it doesn't feel very static. It feels like it's on the verge of chaos, but not quite. Not quite. There's enough repetition to keep your eye wandering through there and just not glance over it, having too much to see and look at and want to go to something else. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about repetition? Good. You are a scholarly audience. Leading lines. Right, leading lines, they help the viewer, they guide the viewer through the image. It's really great when someone can just kind of be led around an image visually. Leading lines keep the viewer's eye from wandering out of the picture. So you had a strong beam or part of a bridge that just shot out on the side, and very easily your eye just kind of visually follows that out, and the person is done with the picture. And so they didn't have a chance to really appreciate what you were trying to say. Here's some examples. This is just a little green away by a spring. And notice how this leading line is on the edge of the picture. There's nowhere else for your eye to go but just to wander down this leading line. So this leading line really brings you into the picture. Here, there's several leading lines. You've got these poles creating repetition, kind of creating a leading line. And you've got the sorry, my mouth is getting tired. You've got this railing, and that just leads you smack in here. And then you've got the edge of the dock, and even the railing where the steps to get down to the dock are. It just boom, boom, everything just goes right to that dude. Okay, here's a repetition of these two lines. And this is kind of static, but it kind of, your eye kind of bounces off this tree. You see the line, and it kind of has a teeny bit of repetition with this trail. But the main leading line is this trail. And it just takes you right into the woods, right along the AT, all the way to Maine. Now this is a very dramatic leading line, especially in Western traditions. You know, we read from left to right. So your eye comes in and it just is all over this net, looking around, and boom, it goes to the person doing the action. And so your eye comes in and it kind of keeps you here to be able to investigate and see what's going on. Okay, this I put in the middle because if it was to the side, I think any one of these petals would shoot somebody's eye. Just, you know, your eye would just fly off the page. But it's just so symmetric. The circle portion of it wins out. So you've got these lines, but they're all leading back to the other lines. So your eye has a hard time escaping this. So you've got these implied leading lines. I mean, these visual leading lines, but then you also kind of have this implied circle shape that's a leading line. Just kind of connect the dots between here and here, the end of the petals. Okay, that's a leading line all over the place. They're just leading you everywhere. You come in the picture and you see this curve you're going, you go to the main part of the flower, you can come back out, and these curves shoot you back all around. This really helps you look at the picture and kind of engage in the picture, and it makes it easy for your eye to figure out where to go next. Okay, this leading line, this is, I can never think of this word, I don't know why. This boom, what this boom's job is to keep whatever icky oil or something on the water surface from getting into the rest of the water source. So you've got this leading line that comes around and just boom, and it ends. And it comes in from the bottom right hand side, both booms together, and then just kind of ends. It's a real powerful leading line, and it says nothing is getting past me. All right, the ultimate leading line is, and my husband Steve, who's a programmer, so he thinks about art totally different. He sees an S curve and he gets all excited because he's like, oh, I know there's a picture with that S curve. Your eye loves to follow curved lines. Here we've got a classic S curve right here, and your eye just wants to follow and find out where you're going. Also, this is more of that Greenway by Rottenwood Creek, and the asphalt makes this great leading line, but also the dots in the middle of the Greenway really just pull your eye along this path. Okay, the next, does anybody have any questions about leading lines? Okay, my scholarly group. Next, we're going to talk about details. Details are important in a photo story. They add color and insight and light and a little more flavor. It makes it more personal. It guides your viewer to parts of the story that you want to emphasize. It gives the viewer more detail into the story. It gives them a better understanding. And many times the detail shots aren't the most, the winning shots, the most standalone shots, but they are the glue that hold your story together. And so here are a few examples. Say you're talking about a forest. A detailed shot of some old growth really kind of hits home that the forest, it's been there for a while. This bud kind of shows you that it's spring. It's an old forest, but there's still a lot going on there. Here, instead of maybe just showing more pictures of the flower, kind of give you some insight of what's going on in that flower's life. You've got this little insect here, this little guy, to just give more detail, give more for the viewer to think about. Signs aren't really that aesthetically, they're not award-winning compositions, but as a detail, they give you a lot of insight. You see a really nice body of water, and you see the beware of alligator sign. It gives you a totally different view of that body of water. And what about if the body of water is closed by recommendation of the health department? That tells you a lot, and it's a good way to keep the glue of your story. You use it as glue of your story. This is we were doing a shoot on the St. John's, and there was a hurricane coming, but the outer bands came sooner than we thought, and we had to hide in this big old boat shed. And this tells the story of exactly what's going on and why we're there. And it really gives some insight into the story of us trying to do a photo shoot in the middle of a hurricane, which was kind of silly. Here's a detail shot. This is just the equipment that I use when I go test my stream. And this just gives the viewer an idea of what all it takes, what all you need to take down, just personalizes it a bit. Okay, moving your body. That is your greatest composition tool. I mean, you can change your background, you can make the angle more exciting, you can emphasize your subject more, you can use the light to its best advantage. So here's a picture of these old trees I just found fascinating. This old tree with all the limbs sticking out, and the light was really nice. So I took this picture, and it's just kind of boring and just a bunch of limbs sticking out everywhere. But all I did was I moved around a little bit. So this time I had this leading line. Remember heard about those before? Come in, and it just actually hugs this tree with all these crazy limbs. And that was just moving a few feet, just kind of paying attention. It's really important to just keep experimenting. And that's one great thing about digital is you can push it and just keep pushing it. You have feedback, you have instant feedback, which is great. And you're not burning through film like we used to use, which is, film gets expensive and developing is expensive. And with a card, you can just erase it and start all over again. Here's another example. Here's a spring. And instead of having the palmetto right here, it doesn't line up. It just kind of, oh yeah, there's a spring behind a palmetto. It's kind of boring. But if I use the arch of the edge of the spring and then use a repetition of that arch again with a palmetto, it makes for a very much more intriguing picture. And we've got about 5 minutes left, so we're kind of on time, but we're going to go through some more stuff next workshop, like the editing and the submitting. We were going to talk about that more later anyway. Moving a few inches, you can dramatically improve your composition. Here, I bet you didn't think I had examples of this, and I do. Here's some tulips in my yard, and that is just an awful shot. It's just awful. There's the color over here that kind of takes your eye away. What is that behind the tulips? And why did you take the picture of the tulips past their prime? And the angle is boring. Just by moving just a teeny bit. Look how much more exciting that is. I've used this magnolia tree as the background. And really, if you look closely, you can still see a teeny bit of those bags, but it's not even an issue anymore. And I changed the angle. And you're looking up at the tulips. And we spend our whole lives looking out from a standing up height. And whenever you can move up or down and change your angle, it just makes your photographs more interesting. And there I just came in a little closer. Here's a tree by a road. The lights behind it. There's a parking lot behind it. Flat, boring tree. Well, if I move like 90 degrees, look what I get. You still got that parking lot. Well, the other side, the parking lot here. But the line of the tree kind of takes over and you don't notice this as much. The repetition of the greens take over. And here this is pulled back, like if you needed to have more of this tree. Still, the light is shining nicer. There's nicer light on the tree. It's not backlit, and backlit isn't always a bad thing. But this is just kind of dancing all over the leaves. And you've got a strong enough repetition and line to kind of your eye kind of forgives this in this car. It's just such a better view than that. It's just moving just a few feet. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is getting in closer. When you get in closer to your subject, it pulls the viewer in closer, and it makes it a more intimate and a personal experience for the viewer. So here's my friend Liz, and this is that one of those cool bridges in Marietta on the bike path. And there's Liz, and then there's the cool pictures, the cool designs on the bike path. It just didn't say much about Liz or the bike path. But if I get in closer, it tells more of a story. You've got Liz, that kind of brings you into the photograph. And actually, even her bike kind of brings you down the path. So it says a lot more. Now here's a picture of my husband, Steve, and here a picture of a bunch of trees in the forest. Really doesn't say much about Steve. Really doesn't say that much about the forest. But if I got in closer, I still got the sense that he's in a forest, but I can see the joy in his face of being in that forest. It really just makes it so much more personal, and it gets the viewer engaged. See, here we go. Okay, now it is. Oh, this is Robert Capa, and he was a photojournalist. He did a lot of work for Life. And his big saying was, if your photographs aren't good enough, you aren't close enough. Okay, section 7. I'm going to let you guys read this. This is Dorothy Lang's version of editing. She's got all her pictures lined up and she's sorting them out. But now I like this method. This is Adobe Bridge. It's a software product and it's free. And the great thing is that it allows you to weight your pictures. Like if you like it kind of, you can put it 5 stars. Don't want it 1 star. And you can do the same thing with colors. A little drop down filter. And there's some information, some way to download that, and some tutorials from, I believe they're from Adobe, to test that out. But basically, for your editing work, I know we're almost done. Your editing work, keep all your work, your first edit, just go through stuff that you don't like at all. You blurred shot, missed shot, the cat ran out of the picture, and then go for the second and third edits. You pick out the best of the similar shots, the things that say the same thing, and then the pictures that catch your eye. Put them in another folder. Then go back into that folder with the edited edits from the second and third edit and put them in a new folder and look and see what your strongest images are and just note them. Put a label, put a 5 star by them or something like that. And then pick your pictures that you best feel like they tell your story. But an important part also is to come back to those pictures that you didn't select in your 4th edit to see if perhaps one might work better than the one you clicked in the sequence of the story. And also that's going to be where you're going to find your glue in your details in your progressions and your shots. And then how to submit. I'm going to give a detailed list of how to submit your stories, basically 5 to 15 images, some text. We're going to get it so that you can submit it and it's going to be easy to hopefully put it up. And there'll be a naming protocol so that we can keep them all together in the right order. The deadline for submitting for the August show, the summer show, is July the 14th. And that's so that we can get them all up and get them straightened out and prepare for our big show. Save your images, save your images, save your images. Here's just an example of a watershed if people aren't familiar with it. Fine print, be nice, don't do anything obscene in your pictures. And the copyright remains yours. We're just using them for this group effort. In the closing, and I'm gonna let you guys review this closing when you get my notes, because we're out of time. But I just wanted to remind you the next workshop is May 17th, and we're going to talk more about light in photographs, in black and white photographs versus color photographs. Go into the editing process in depth, and go into the submission process. And I'm going to send out a questionnaire before we meet again at the beginning of May. And if you have anything special you want to ask, we want to talk about, we'll go over that too. Remember the virtual opening is August 3rd, And remember, you have your own email address just for this project. Oh, I put my stream stories instead of our stream stories. I just realized that. Anyway, email me, email Mike, and Friday I'll have ourstreamstories.com open and live for you guys to look at samples and get more references. And I'll see you May the 17th. And thank you so much for joining me. It was fun. It was fun putting this together. And I look forward to all the great work we're going to have together. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, Ann. Good night, everybody. We'll send out an email with those links. Take care.
Bye-bye.